master breeder, multiple Best in Show winner, and 3 times Breeder of the Year, Frank DeNigris will be discussing some of the most common pigeon diseases and their treatments. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Northeast Pigeons and our first official podcast. Thank you, Frank, for coming on to the first podcast. A lot of new fanciers have a lot of problems with their birds getting sick. So, what are some of the most common diseases that you are familiar with?
Thanks for having me on the show, Shiv. I appreciate it. Thank you. Uh, there's a few common illnesses that are plaguing the hobby forever. Uh, we have coccidiosis, we have paratyphoid, we have canker, we have respiratory diseases, and of course we have adeno.
Okay.
Years ago, we never heard of adenovirus, not in the pigeon circles. Never heard of it. I believe Adeno's been around a very long time. We were just not aware of it.
Hmm,
But today,
interesting.
these diseases plague all pigeon fanciers. There's no way around it. Uh, Best thing you could do is know the symptoms of what you're looking at. Pay attention to your birds because your birds will tell you what's wrong with them.
Hmm.
And just years of observing the birds and trial and error, I've gotten pretty good at distinguishing and being able to diagnose what's going on with my birds. And I was fortunate to help a few fanciers over the years overcome some of their illnesses. So
Okay.
prior to breeding season, you should have wormed your birds. Make sure your birds are on a good, healthy feed regimen, vitamins, quality products. Always help the birds. Uh, I treat my birds prior to breeding. Any small infections that the birds are experiencing that maybe you don't see, this particular product eradicates that. So that when I go into a breeding season, I'm pretty assured that I'm going to have a great breeding season with no issues. So
So
this
when
is
it
something
comes,
that,
sorry about that. So when it comes to breeding, you deworm your birds first, and then you give them some sort of you know, medication that will prevent anything that they may have or take care of
yes,
anything they may
I
have?
I use a product that works on 5 of the common diseases that plague the pigeons prior to breeding.
Okay.
Uh, I do this every year, and like I said, I have no issue during my breeding season. I've been very fortunate. Uh, Another thing is during the year, guys go to pigeon shows and stuff like that. You should vaccinate your birds.
Mhm.
Vaccinations help in a big way. Guys bring their birds to pigeon shows. There's birds from all over, especially variety shows, big meets and stuff like that. There's birds coming from all over the country at some shows. So I believe vaccination is a big help. And they have vaccines available for us today. You have some that are 3-in-1. You have some vaccines that are strictly for a particular disease, like paramyxovirus, paratyphoid. So we have these vaccines available to us, and we should use them. It's a big help. I believe it protects the birds. I've been very fortunate with my birds. The only thing I've experienced coming back from shows is a mild case of adenovirus. And I treat them with a product that I've been using for years. I've never had any losses. My birds always bounce back, but I know the symptoms. I know what to look for. Now, when I come back from a show, Usually a week to the day, I notice the birds vomiting. When I
Mhm.
start seeing vomiting, I know I have a dino. I treat the birds. I won't treat them until I see signs of the disease. If I don't see signs of the disease, I believe that the birds are able to fight off that mild infection. And instead of treating them, I let their own bodies fight that infection. But when I
So
start to see them,
do you put the birds in quarantine that come back
no,
from the shows?
that's see now that's another thing I don't do. A lot of guys quarantine their birds. I have never quarantined my birds. I feel that the birds are stressed enough at a bird show. Then you take them home and you put them in a dark garage, or you put them in a basement, or in a shed, in a cage, and you keep them there for a week or two. I feel that stresses the bird further. What I like to do is come home, put my birds back in the loft. This way they go back on their perch, back in their nest box, back with their mate. Brings normalcy back to the birds. They're no longer stressed. Now they're home. That's worked very well for me.
But now
Mind
what
you,
about the rest of the
not
birds that are in there that you didn't bring to the show? I mean, aren't there isn't there a
well.
chance of those birds getting sick if you did pick something up
There's
or your birds did pick something up?
there's always a chance, and what happens is the birds I do bring back from the show, if they pick up a dinovirus, the birds that didn't go to the show in my local will get it as well.
Mhm.
But the trick is, keep your birds healthy, feed them well, make sure they're in good condition. Pigeons live in equilibrium with disease, believe it or not. When a bird's immunity is weakened, these diseases tend to flare up. Coccidiosis, uh, canker, these things, with they live with the birds, believe it or not.
Mhm.
And if you keep the birds healthy, they're able to fight off mild infections of those diseases. When the birds are stressed, they get knocked down, these diseases tend to flare up. So I try to maintain my birds as healthy as possible, in great condition. I feed them very well. I give them great products. It's worked for me over the years. I've never had an issue, thank God, coming back from a show. I introduce those birds back to the loft. I watch them. They go back. The cockbirds are cooing. The hens are back in their boxes or on their perches. Everybody's happy. It works for me.
So I'm sure I've heard or, seen people post online about shows and their birds getting sick and whatnot. So what do you think they're doing wrong?
I think that you want to show birds. You can't keep 300 pigeons. Number one, you're not going to feed them properly because that's 300 birds you got to feed. Feed is expensive. If you want to show birds, cull down to a manageable amount of birds, whether it's 20 pair, 15 pair, 10 pair. Work with those birds. Feed them well, give them great products, and vaccinate. I can't stress that enough. Guys, vaccinate your birds. I have a vaccine gun. I vaccinate my birds all by myself. It takes seconds, minutes, not even, to vaccinate one bird. I do it so quickly, you'd be amazed how fast it is. I do it all alone. Guys need help. Reach out to me. If you're local, I can help you. Guys in my club in the ATU, you guys need help vaccinating your birds? Reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to help. Central Jersey, same thing. Anyone need help in vaccinating their birds or want to vaccinate their birds? Let me know. I'll give you all the information you need and how to, and quite possibly I'll help you do it. But vaccinating, I think, is very important. This way, everyone is assured that their birds have some protection, whether we believe it or not. We vaccinate the birds. I want to believe they have protection. So if I know you as a fancier, you're vaccinated your birds, I kind of feel, well, I'm not going to get nothing from his birds because he's vaccinated these birds. That's, I think, we should all do. As far
Okay.
as medicating the birds blindly, totally against it. You medicate when you have to medicate. There's no such thing as I'm going to put a 4-1 in the water once a week because that does nothing for the birds. And when the birds do get ill, they're so conditioned to that medication that
Hmm.
it's not effective anymore. So do not treat blindly. Do not treat prior to shows. Do not treat after shows. You see symptoms, you treat. There are so many great pigeon products out there today to cover all the diseases. Just a phone call away or a pigeon store away. Use them. Stop with the old school remedies. They don't work. They don't work. Today, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, yeah, we didn't have these products. We had Oreomycin, we had iodine in the water. That's basically the things we had available to us. Today, we have everything available for all the diseases: paratyphoid, cancer, respiratory, you name it. We have a product that helps that. And guys need to use it. And store your products indoors. Do not leave them outdoors, in the coop, in the shed. Not good. Not
Okay. So you want to store them indoors in the proper
good. Keep them indoors
environment, right? Temperature.
in a
Some things need to
temperature
be
control.
refrigerated
Right.
once it's opened.
Some medications need to be refrigerated. Read the directions on the bottle. Follow the directions. Storing them outdoors, they're subjected to temperature changes, and that affects the efficacy of the product. Powdered
Hmm.
products become hard because of the temperature change. Cold in the
Yeah.
evening, warm during the day, the product sweats within and gets hard. No good.
Yeah. I was gonna say
Keep them
humidity
indoors.
too. I'm sure that's probably
Oh, definitely,
causing
definitely. Then
problems.
you keep them indoors, keep them in your home. Find a place in your house, in your closet, on a shelf. Store your products there. This way, they're temperature controlled and always keep fresh products on hand. I go through my products every year. I check the expiration dates. If I have a product that's going to expired a month ago, it's still somewhat effective. 6 months down the road, it's not. I discard it and I buy a new product. But anywhere in that window, a month to two, maybe 3 months, that product is still viable. You can still use it.
We're talking about these homemade remedies and things like that. What are some of the silliest ones that you've heard or like the funniest ones
Uh,
that made you laugh, when someone
I mean,
maybe mentioned it or said it?
I,
Is anything
I, I,
particular
I
that
mean,
comes to mind?
I've even tried them myself, and I'm not going to say I didn't. I've tried them myself. Uh, there was Clorox in the water back in the day. Iodine. Uh, a lot of people use elderberry juice. Elderberry juice, a natural product. I have nothing bad to say about it, but I don't think it's a cure for a disease.
Would you
I
say it's
think
a
it's more of a
preventative though?
I don't think it's even a preventative. I think it's more of
Mm,
a health product
okay.
that's good for the birds. I don't think it helps them with adeno or anything like that. That's my own belief. Other guys could swear by it, so be it. Use it,
Mhm.
good luck. I don't use that. I use certain products for certain diseases.
Okay. It's funny because there's a fancier that uses honey, mixes honey in the water. Do you Have you ever heard about that, or
I
what are your
I've heard of yogurt in the water as
I've
a
heard about that
probiotic.
too. Correct. You don't think
Yogurt.
that's true though? You don't think that holds true that there's,
Well, yeah, you know what?
probiotics?
Yeah, I believe it holds true, but why would you use yogurt when you could buy quality pigeon probiotics on the market that are made specifically for pigeons? Why
Mm,
not use that?
Might be like a cutting corners, just trying to save money, cost effective type of thing.
Well, you know what? These products are not super expensive. You know what I mean? We're pigeon fanciers. We accept the cost of the hobby. You understand?
Mhm.
There's no cheapness to this hobby. Everyone knows that. So it's either you want to keep your birds healthy, you want to feed them sirloin steak, or you want to feed them hamburger. Some of us can only afford the hamburger. I understand that. But if you could, I give the best products I can to my birds. That's why
Yeah,
when they go in
makes
the show
sense.
cage, my birds are vibrant, they're lively, they shine because of the products I give them and how I take care of them. In these two pictures, you notice that the bird has its beak open and you can see the telltale yellow deposits in its throat. That's one of the most common things you're going to see when with canker. You're going to see it in the bird's throat as it grows. A lot of times you don't see canker that's internal in the bottom picture. You notice that this particular bird was dissected, and you can clearly see that white canker nodule.
That's right
A,
here. I
a
think my
lot.
mouse is on it.
That's right there exactly. And a lot of birds can have canker internally. I had a fancier friend of mine come to me. This bird was had a big lump on it. I used the needle to try extract. I thought maybe it might have been a cyst. Maybe I could withdraw some of the liquid from it. Anyway, it was a mess. I knew right away it was canker. I told my friend the product to use. He said the lump went away within days,
Oh wow.
and it cured his canker. So, these are things I'm familiar with. I'm no scientist. I'm no doctor, but these are the things that I had uh, 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 observed over the years, and I kind of look further into it. I like to research things, and I just don't jump in with 2 feet. I like to research things and get a better understanding of what I'm dealing with, and that's what I come up with. But a lot
Okay.
of times you'll see the deposits in the throat like that, and canker loves to rear its head when you're breeding. You see it in the young ones. I've lost young ones in the past to canker. It's something you really have to get a hold of from Jump Street.
So it's a very common disease during breeding season.
Yes, you see it. You do see it during breeding season, the young ones and stuff like that. Yep.
Okay. And do you know what causes canker? Like, is there anything particular?
I believe it's a protozoa within the bird. Uh, I'm not very scientific about it. I'll be honest with you. I just know what it looks like. I know how to get rid of it. This is typical of an intestinal disorder in the pigeon. In this case, I believe this is This is a dropping indicating coccidiosis.
Okay.
Okay, this is another disease that the birds live with 24/7. It's always within the bird, and when the bird is stressed or sick with another ailment, this tends to rear its head and show itself. So this is easily treatable. Uh, Clean loft treatment usually eradicates this in the birds and helps the birds.
So
Usually
basically, runny stools no good when it comes to pigeon. You always want it to be nice and
right.
firm
You
in a
want
sense
right. You want
with
to
that
see a
little
nice
white.
right, a little tiny thing with a white cap on it. That's a healthy stool.
Yeah.
Now, depending on what you're feeding birds, like some of us, including myself, I feed pellets. So the stools on my birds are going to be bigger and pulpier, but they're not loose and running.
Okay. And when you say pellets, that's what, chicken pellets
No, I use pellets specifically made for pigeons.
for pigeons?
Pure
Okay.
Grain makes Pure Grain. Now it's Missouri. They make a pellet called NutriBlend. Those are the
And
pellets I use for my birds.
this is strictly during the breeding season that you're using the pellets.
I use the pellets all year round, and I
all
also
year
feed
round?
grain.
Okay, so you
I
mix them
feed.
both
I don't mix them. I feed them separately, but I give them to the
separately.
birds. All, yeah, I give them to the birds all year round.
So how do you go about doing that separately? You bring one in at a time, or
Well, sometimes what I'll do is I'll feed them a week exclusively just pellets.
oh, okay, so you alternate it.
Sometimes prior to a show, 2 weeks prior to a show, I feed my birds strictly pellets to bring them into condition, give them a good.
Oh,
You got to remember, pigeons. You give pigeons grain, pigeons are going to eat what they like. They're like kids. You put a hamburger in front of a kid, or you put it in an ice cream cone. They're going to eat the ice cream cone first. Same thing with the pigeons. You put feed down, watch your pigeons. They're going to pick the seeds they like first. So, if you got a bird that eats all safflower, you got one bird that eats all vetch, you got one bird that picks up only corn. Are they getting all the nutrients and nutrition that they really need? Absolutely not.
mm,
So, we supplement vitamins, we give them probiotics, we do all these things to increase their nutritional value from what they're not getting from eating. But what I found with the pellets is the pellets are created and they're balanced. So if my pigeons only eat 30 pellets, they're getting nutrition out of those 30 pellets. You follow me?
mhm. Yeah, yeah, makes sense.
So I know when they're eating the pellets, they're getting everything they need from those pellets. I give
But
them grain because, go ahead.
when you're switching between grain and pellets, though, do you notice the birds acting picky? Like, do they prefer one over the other?
My birds prefer grain over anything. That's just
Yeah,
how it
okay.
is.
Yeah,
But my birds are also conditioned to eat pellets.
okay.
So yeah, sometimes I alternate 1 day grain, 1 day pellet, 1 day grain, 1 day pellet. I alternate. This way, I give them the grain that they love so much, and then I give them the pellets. I know that they're getting everything they need. See,
And how much does that bag of pellets cost? Is it a 50-pound bag, 40-pound bag?
it's a 50-pound bag, and it could run you upwards of close to $40 a bag.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, not
Okay.
cheap. Infectious catarrh, and usually you'll see if the birds are prolonged suffering with a respiratory illness, you may see this stringy mucus in the mouth, discoloration within the throat and the wattle of the bird. So again, this is a respiratory illness, and respiratory illness comes in all different forms. This is one of them. Respiratory, I found, is very common in when there's a lot of moisture, a lot of rain,
Oh,
a lot of humidity. That usually brings on a respiratory illness.
probably more around springtime then, I'm guessing.
Yeah, you see it a lot in spring. You see it I see it in the young birds in the spring of the year. And how I could tell my birds are suffering with a respiratory is their eye seals get puffy.
Mm.
Eye seals get puffy, almost swollen. They usually don't have a nasal discharge because then that's more of a advanced form of respiratory. So I usually don't let it get to that point, but I tend to try to let my birds fight through it, and I watch them and pay attention to them. And a lot of times they fight through that mild case of respiratory. But when it starts to manifest and get worse, I got to treat, and that's what I do. I treat.
So I know you didn't want to mention any products, but like what would you treat it with? Just can you throw some names out there?
The best product I use is doxycycline pilosin in combination. Great product.
And does this just get mixed in the water or is it a pill? How do you
Yes,
administer this?
I'm a believer in products in the water. I'm not a believer in products mixed on the feed because I find that difficult to get the right amount, the right dosage. So I prefer products that go in the water because I know I can mix it effectively, and I know the birds have to drink. They're going to get it. Ornithosis. Again, it's another respiratory element. Notice how the bird's eye is like crusted shut. That's an advanced symptom of the respiratory illness where the eyes discharge and the eyes close. And if you notice in the lower picture, that bird is actually breathing heavy, having trouble breathing because of his air sacs are probably uh, inflamed from the respiratory illness.
So for the bird on the top, would you use like an ointment directly on the eye, or is it once again in the water?
I mean, they have ointments you could use on the eye, but again, I would treat the birds with the product for the respiratory. Paratyphoid. Again, notice the droppings are very similar. It's a hard disease to identify because the birds don't always get the boils on the leg or the boil in the wing, which is an indicator of paratyphoid. Sometimes you don't see it. You see that their droppings are loose like that. So you know there's something going on within their intestinal system. So one way you could identify it is during the breeding season. You'll notice that your eggs aren't fertile. Your young ones are dying within the egg. Young ones die within a few days after hatching. That's how you could pretty much distinguish that you definitely have a paratyphoid problem.
And this is curable, right?
It's treatable. Uh, I'm not sure if you can eradicate it because the birds that you have birds in your loft that are carriers of it.
Mhm.
And unless you eliminate those carriers, this is going to flare up. In my case, I had it in my loft. I had it for 2 seasons.
Oh wow.
And I treated the birds. They overcame it. I was able to breed finally. Following year, same thing. It flared up again. I was able to pinpoint where it was coming from. I got rid of those birds. Never had an issue since.
I've read it's salmonella, right? So for mice, rats,
Salmonella,
things like that.
right? Salmonella. That's another thing too. If you have a rodent problem, most likely you're going to get this disease.
Yeah.
So it's important to be on top of your. If you have a rodent infestation, get right on it, eradicate it, because this is going to hurt your birds.
Yeah, I remember from my personal experience, back like maybe 13, 14 years ago, whatever it was, I got some Donics and I was very excited, got breeding cages, paired them up, and was looking forward to raising some babies that could fly. And they would lay the eggs, but then once the babies hatched, after a couple of days, they would die. And I just couldn't figure out why.
Yep, yep,
And I had them in a shed, and of course the shed was made out of wood, and there was openings underneath the door, I guess where the mice and the rats were getting in through,
yep, yep.
and they were probably just picking up all the loose feed and
Yep.
running
They're
around on top of the cages, and
right.
the
They're
urine and the
urinating,
feces. Yeah, and I think that's what did
urinating,
it.
defecating. Yep, yep.
Yeah.
That's the big culprit right there. That's
Yeah, it was frustrating. Like
yeah,
I didn't have much knowledge at the time or experience,
yeah.
and it was just they would have the babies. I would get excited. They would grow for a couple of days, and then I'd come and check on them, and they'd be dead, and I just couldn't figure out why.
Even in some advanced stages of the salmonella paratyphoid disease, the birds also show signs of like a paramyxo. They have like a paralysis where they
Mhm.
twist their heads, and also sometimes you can misdiagnose that instead of saying, well, it's not paratyphoid. Now if you think it's paramyxovirus. You follow me?
Mhm.
So some of the other symptoms you need to pick up on to try to, uh, narrow it down to what exactly it is. Again, I'm not 100%. I've been very fortunate identifying these diseases within my loft and treating it. I've been very lucky that way. Again, I'm no scientist or doctor or anything like that. I just these are the things that work for me, and I'm happy to share them with the rest of the community. You should worm your birds at least twice a year. Worm them at least twice a year.
So
Uh,
for worming, what do you like to use for that now? And when you say
uh,
twice a year, what times of the year?
I like to do it before breeding, and I like to do it after the breeding season, before the heavy molt. This way you could uh, worm your young birds as well. Uh, there's a product out there. It's very safe to use. It's called Moxie Dector. A lot of the big pigeon stores, uh, pigeon warehouses, and all they carry it, and it's a great product. Works very well, and it's safe.
And that's just mixed in the water as well, right?
Yeah, mix that in the water. Directions come on the bottle. Follow it to a T, and mix it. Give it to the birds for the duration of treatment, and that's it. Doesn't
Okay.
hurt their feathering. It doesn't do anything. It's very safe to use with the birds.
Is this also effective for feather lice and mites and things like that,
No,
or
it's
no?
not. No, it's not.
Are
It's
there any products
effective.
out there
It's
that
effective for blood-sucking parasites, pigeon flies, red mites.
oh, okay.
Once once the product gets into the bird's bloodstream, it's supposed to eradicate those blood-sucking parasites. The feather lice you see on the birds live on the birds all year round. There is no way to eradicate those lice off the bird no matter what you do.
Really?
You can control it, you can never eradicate it.
Oh, wow.
Okay? I've dipped my birds, dipped them, head underwater, the whole bird soaking wet. It controls the lice, but you do get the lice back.
I mean, could that be because it's, in the loft, between the
Well,
crevices of the
I,
perches or
I,
the
I spray my loft. These particular parasites, those long feather lice you see, they
mhm.
can't live off the bird.
Oh, okay. Makes
They
sense.
live on the bird and they eat the dander that the bird produces. They don't
Okay.
put holes in the feathers. When you see holes in the bird's feathers, that's from a pigeon fly.
Okay.
When you open up a wing and you see all like bullet holes riddled throughout, that's from a pigeon fly.
So basically parasites, right, on a host
Yeah.
that they have to, be on the pigeon, otherwise they won't survive.
Yep. When you spray the birds with a lice control product, I tend to spray the rump very well under the tail because pigeon flies love to hang out in that general area and feed off the bird. So if you
Mhm.
get a good squirt or two on them, you kill them right away. You see the
Okay.
fly fall off the bird, you step on it and get
I
rid
don't
of
think
it.
I've ever seen a pigeon fly, so
You're very fortunate. Uh, I happy to say I don't see it in my loft out in New Jersey, but on the roof flying back in Brooklyn, I saw my share of pigeon flies. Believe me.
thank you, Frank, once again for coming on to the first podcast and covering some
Thank
of
you,
the
sir. Anytime,
common
anytime.
pigeon diseases.
I
Looking
hope,
forward to
I hope I can help a lot of, help some people, with some of the problems. If you have any questions, you could always reach out to me on the Pigeon platforms on Facebook. I'll be more than happy to help you if I could.